the strategy that only failed at scale. For years, it was considered elegant, almost beautiful in its simplicity. Then, the moment became truly successful, it began to break. At first glance, the strategy seemed immune to failure. It was grounded in logic, supported by data, and refined through repeated testing. Small positions, careful sizing, incremental gains. Nothing about it suggested fragility. In fact, its greatest strength appeared to be restraint. To understand why this story matters now, we need to examine how scale changes behavior without changing intention. The original idea was modest: exploit small inefficiencies, capture predictable patterns, operate quietly within the noise of the market. When deployed in limited size, it worked exactly as designed. Early adopters treated it as a tool, not a solution. It complemented other strategies. It added stability. It reduced volatility. Performance reports showed consistency, not brilliance. That consistency attracted attention, and attention attracted capital. As the strategy spread, its mechanics didn't change. The rules stayed the same. The signals remained intact. What changed was participation. More institutions adopted it. More capital followed the same instructions. What once operated in the margins now occupied meaningful space. At this stage, success reinforced belief. Each additional dollar deployed produced familiar results. Models scaled neatly. Risk controls adjusted smoothly. The strategy appeared linear, as if it could expand indefinitely without altering its environment. But markets are not static backdrops. They respond to behavior. As scale increased, the strategy stopped merely reacting to prices and began influencing them. Its trades became part of the signal it was designed to read. This interaction was subtle. No single participant noticed it. Individually, positions were still small relative to the market. Collectively, they were not. The strategy began feeding on conditions it helped create. What made this dangerous was timing. The feedback loop did not produce immediate failure. It produced smoother performance. Volatility declined further. Signals became clearer. Confidence deepened. Scale felt justified. The strategy was no longer just exploiting inefficiency. It was shaping it. And as long as conditions remained calm, that distinction didn't matter. But scale changes more than outcomes. It changes exit paths. It changes liquidity needs. It changes how quickly positions must move when conditions shift. None of this appeared in early backtests, because early backtests never ask what happens when everyone runs the same play. The strategy did not fail because it was flawed. It failed because it succeeded beyond the environment it was designed for. And that is where the real story begins. As the strategy scaled, its footprint grew quietly. Trade sizes increased. Execution windows narrowed. Timing became more precise, not because the logic demanded it, but because scale required efficiency. What once tolerated flexibility now needed coordination. The market began to adapt. Prices adjusted slightly earlier. Movements became smoother around the strategy's entry points. Signals appeared cleaner, reinforcing confidence. To participants, this looked like validation. The strategy seemed to understand the market better with size. But this was illusion through influence. The strategy was no longer observing behavior. It was participating in its creation. Each execution nudged prices just enough to affect the next signal. Feedback replaced independence. At moderate scale, this effect was beneficial. It reduced noise. It stabilized returns. But as capital continued to accumulate, the margin for error narrowed. Small deviations mattered more. Slippage increased subtly. Exits required more coordination than models anticipated. Risk controls responded mechanically. Limits adjusted upward to reflect stability. Volatility metrics justified larger exposure. What had once been conservative now looked underutilized. The system rewarded expansion without demanding new safeguards. Behind the scenes, correlations crept higher. Different implementations of the same idea began behaving similarly. Funds that believed they were diversified discovered they were synchronized. The strategy became a shared dependency. The synchronization mattered most during transitions. When conditions shifted even slightly, the strategy's reactions aligned across participants. Entries clustered, exits overlapped. Liquidity that once absorbed trades now had to process waves of identical intent. Yet nothing broke. Not yet. Losses remained manageable. Drawdown stayed within expectations. Each recovery reinforced belief that scale had not changed the essence of the strategy. What nobody fully accounted for was concentration of behavior. The strategy's success reduced variation. And without variation, markets lose their shock absorbers. Scale had transformed a clever idea into a structural force, one that required conditions to remain friendly not just occasionally, but continuously. The strategy still worked, but now it could only work if everyone else behaved predictably, and markets are rarely willing to make that promise. The conflict surfaced when the environment shifted just enough to expose the cost of scale. Not a crisis, not a shock, just a change in rhythm. Volatility ticked higher. Liquidity thinned slightly. Timing became less forgiving. Under these conditions, the strategy behaved exactly as designed. Signals triggered. Positions adjusted. Risk controls responded. But now, thousands of implementations reacted the same way, within the same windows, chasing the same exits. What once felt like coordination now felt like congestion. Trades that had slipped quietly into market began to move prices visibly. Slippage increased. Execution delays appeared. The strategy was no longer flowing through the market. It was pressing against it. As prices moved faster, feedback intensified. The strategy's own activity altered the signals it depended on. Moves that should have resolved cleanly instead extended. Adjustments triggered further adjustments. What had been self-correcting at small scale became self-reinforcing at large scale. Risk systems interpreted the volatility as a signal to reduce exposure. Across institutions, reductions began almost simultaneously, not out of panic, but out of protocol. Selling pressure increased in waves, not because conditions were catastrophic, but because rules demanded alignment. Liquidity providers reacted predictably. They widened spreads. They reduced size. They stepped back. The very depth the strategy assumed would be present was conditional on behavior remaining dispersed. Now it wasn't. This is where scale became the flaw. The strategy had not lost its logic. It had lost its ability to exit smoothly. Positions sized for normal conditions could not unwind without becoming the market. Each attempt to reduce risk increased visible stress. Confidence began to erode, not through fear, but through realization. The strategy had outgrown its environment. It required more liquidity than the market could provide at once. It required participants to behave differently from one another, even though they were using the same rules. As drawdowns deepened, the idea of patience disappeared. The system no longer had time to wait for conditions to normalize. Normalization now required unwinding, and unwinding required acceptance of losses. The strategy had reached its limit, not because it stopped working, but because too many people needed it to stop working at the same time. And once scale crosses that threshold, the buildup becomes irreversible. The end did not arrive as a dramatic collapse. It arrived as recognition. The strategy had not failed intellectually. It had failed mechanically. It no longer fit inside the market it helped shape. Once participants accepted this, behavior changed quickly. Exposure was reduced not because confidence vanished, but because capacity had been reached. The strategy could not grow, stabilize, or even remain neutral without distorting prices. It had become too large to behave quietly. As exits continued, the feedback loop reversed. What once smoothed volatility now amplified it. What once clarified signals now blurred them. The same scale that delivered years of consistent returns made recovery slower and losses harder to contain. In hindsight, the warning was always present. The strategy worked best when it was small, when it lived at the edges, when it could move without being seen. Its failure at scale was not an accident. It was a natural outcome of success. Afterward, reviews focused on execution, timing, and implementation. But the deeper lesson was structural. Not every idea is meant to scale indefinitely. Some strategies rely on being insignificant. Once they become important, they change the system they depend on. This pattern repeats because markets reward success quickly and punish limits slowly. Capital follows what works, rarely asking whether it can keep working at size. By the time that question matters, the answer is already shaping outcomes. The strategy did exactly what it was designed to do. It revealed an inefficiency. It captured it, and by capturing too much of it, it removed it. The